Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Brea. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're in the aftermath of the storm, and everyone in the clearing is trying to, work to figure out the food situation, because, the mushrooms got ruined because of the rain. They're trying to, kind of create a makeshift greenhouse, Scott, Riley, and Josh are, but that kind of falls apart. So it's right, we need to learn how to fix, and grow stuff here. If we don't, we're screwed. And lo and behold, who's out in the wild waiting for them? The little boy that's from the village. His name's Isaiah. He's been keeping an eye on them, because we thought it was just Silas, but maybe Silas was following Isaiah's, maybe that's why he came across him, is because Isaiah came across him first, and he's just been keeping an eye on him ever since. So they patch him up because he hurt himself a little bit. But this could be the bridge they need to gap between their people and theirs. This way, it could be an offering, a peace sign of everything's good. We're not here to be bad guys. Obviously, Isaiah's the one that's pushing for the whole no, no, not Isaiah. His grandfather Silas is the one that's pushing for the whole they're terrible people, be wary of sky people thing. So obviously, when they do get to the village, the leader, which you have typing wait, you're the leader. It's yeah. And so it's luckily for Ty, they had their moment last episode, so she's a lot more welcoming of them. So she's right, let them in, we'll teach you whatever we need to teach you. We do learn a little bit about their past, about also why they're probably mixed the way they are, as well as why they can speak English, because there was a passenger ship that came here. Once again, I don't know if that's the passenger ship she's referencing, whether or not that's a more recent passenger ship, or whether that's a situation of referencing the people that brought the 18th century gold. Now, once again, that could have been, because didn't she say in the past, wasn't it 60 years or was it 6 years? I didn't quite catch that. So that's why I'm wondering, was it a situation of, that's why I'm is it, because it makes a difference. Because if it was 6 years ago, that's one thing. But if it was 60 years ago, that's another thing too. Because it could be wondering is the timey-wiminess not, because she just said a passenger ship. So I don't know what time frame they were from, whether more modern day or, assuming a passenger ship, I'd assume it'd have correlations to the gold and stuff like that. I wish I hadn't slipped up on that detail, because I think that's an important detail. But the fact is that they were at war with them for years, but then eventually, the survivors on both sides kind of commingled, because we do know that there are other villages. So they are people from this time specifically. They've just mingled with people not from this time, and so that's why we exchange cultures and everything. I wonder is the same correlation to other villages? So other villages will probably speak the more typical native tongue, where they're speaking English because this is where their particular tribe are the ones that kind of battled it out. So maybe the other villages didn't, but it's there are other villages out there, which I guess they kind of have issues with sometimes too. But we haven't really seen that. We haven't seen it in the confines of the show of an issue between the villages. Very 100, because you mean what were initially the Grounders became revealed to be they're Tree Crew. They're one of many different tribes that live. So making the 100 comparison, because I've been doing that a lot lately. Was it just this, or was there something else I was making a comparison to the 100? I don't remember. It might have just been this. I feel like there was something else I was making. I just can't think of it off the top of my head right now. But regardless, they do open their doors to them, well, metaphorically speaking, of hey, we're going to let you, teach you how to grow stuff here. And obviously, Levi's the most suspicious. I don't trust that Silas guy. He's the one that found Eddie's body and stuff like that. But the leader was kind of no, Silas' situation isn't what you're thinking. Is which she knows something about Silas's circumstances, but I guess just not everything. But it is interesting, because he was I got Eddie's wallet because I was trying to figure out who you people were. So it's just he was saying he was dead before I got there. I was is that true? Because we know Jonathan was killed. But she's like, oh, I found the body, and like obviously Eddie brought me. We not Eddie, Silas. We grabbed Jonathan. We put him in that like burial circle. It's kind of meant to be like a symbol of protection and just like giving him a somewhat proper burial in a way. So, but it's like you're still, because obviously you still have your suspicions. Like, I don't know about Silas. That's interesting. It is an interesting thing too, because like it correlates but present day and in the past, but like Isaiah brings Eve to like the water, and it's like, oh yeah, like it'd be kind of one of her favorite places present day. Like, you know, Gavin's like, oh yeah, like me and your mom, like you know, this be one of her favorite spaces. So like they'd all sit there for like hours on end and whatnot, you know. So I think like I was like, that's interesting how that ties in later on, but we'll get to that soon enough. But obviously, then, like, Isaiah gets kidnapped by some woman. It never even crossed my mind. I was like, what woman? Is this someone from the other villages? I'm like, you idiot. What random woman is, like, running around the place that we haven't seen in a couple episodes? I was like, Aldridge. And it's like, he's like, oh. And he calls her by her name. I'm like, wait, you guys know? What's going on? You know each other. And it's like, at first I was like, wait, are you his mom? Because she was like, because Isaiah has said like he didn't know his parents, because he ended up slipping up when he brought it up to Eve. He was like, yeah, we've only been here a little bit. She's like, wait, you weren't part of the passenger ship? He's like, we're not supposed to talk about it. You're like, wait, what? So it's like, are you? Maybe he's not from. So it's like at that point you go like, wait, does that mean they're not from that world that they did transport? They're from somewhere else too, or like, is Aldridge actually from this world and she landed back in that? Like, how she knows what she knows, I would only assume could be that. Not unless they're all from, like, our world, and then they somehow ended up in that world. And somehow, like, Aldridge found her way back. Because she was like, this is where I'm meant to be. So, like, she knows, like, she's like, oh, I have some greater destiny. I have some greater role in all of this. Sadly, Silas ended up stabbing her. Levi recognized her from the photo of, like, you know, Dr. Nathan. He saw Aldridge as well as, like, the other people. Like, obviously, like, she built the plane that they all crashed in here, but not, never was actually on board. So, all the while that's happening and they're figuring that all out, because that's a complicated situation. We're going to circle back to, at the end, we have the whole situation with, in the clearing, like, Sam is off his medication and he starts acting a little erratic, and even Riley's like, okay, 1 minute you're like worried about me, and then the next minute you're like ignored, like you were fine with me going off into the storm, but all of a sudden he's like, yeah, this is different, there's a killer, I don't want you around Josh right now, I want you here where I can keep an eye on you. It's like, okay. I don't think his decision making was too erratic. I mean, it's not like he did anything crazy, but he was acting like erratic. Just because he was like, just like the threat. He was like too on alert. But we kind of find out about it later on, because he finally opens up to Riley about, like, right, he has PTSD. He was taking medication for it, but the only people who knew were Riley's mom. Was Riley's mama. And he's like, why didn't you ever tell us about it? And it's like, I wanted you and your brother to, like, still see me as that superhero, because he wanted to feel like he was, you know, it's like, right, I want you to see that, like, I was unstoppable. Like, I wanted to be that in your eyes, that, like, nothing would ever be wrong, you know. But obviously for him, he's like, he's scared. And Riley's like, I'm scared too, but we'll figure it out, you know. So, because it ties into the whole, like, Veronica thing, because Lily's quickly adjusting to, like, oh, with everyone around and stuff like that. But obviously, I thought it was sweet, because it's like, oh, Ty ran off on his own. Like, you know, I think that's when Isaiah was in the woods. But Ty, she was worried. She's like, what if Veronica hurts Ty again? And it's like, you know, it's like, right, you're more concerned for everyone else's safety other than your sister's, because it's like, right, it's not really your sister. But even though it's a complicated thing of, like, right, she's part of the people who kidnapped you, but she was also nice to you, because, you know, once again, Veronica was a victim herself. So she wants to grab Lily, because she's like, right, he was going to separate us. It's like, no, he wasn't. He was going to make sure, like, I don't know. I think probably would have, if they had gone back to their, like, time, like, they probably would have been separated. Like, because she's like, you're just going to charge me, you're going to arrest me for what my dad did. Like, I was part of it, but it's not because she had much of a choice. So, and once again, she's just as much of a victim in this situation as Lily is. But but like Sam wanted to handcuff her in the car, and she was like panicking. And it's like, yeah, it's not like, I mean, to be fair, like, especially they probably all now know, right? She's a victim too, so it's not like the whole thing was her choice. Yeah, she might have hurt Ty. It's not like she killed him though, but still, it's like, well, I mean, I think she's kind of dangerous, so I think that was the right move to make in certain regards. But it's like, yeah. But once again, he was looking at her like she's a monster, she's a threat, she needs to be locked up, and But Mary Beth didn't agree with it because it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, like she might be the way she is, but she's also still kind of a kid herself. So, because I think also seeing her like that was probably bothering the hell out of Lily too. But later on, she ends up like having an anxiety attack and almost like stops breathing for a bit, but luckily Sam was able to bring her back, and I think that freaked him out because it's like, right, my decision making in this moment led to this. Like, this girl could have died and it could have been all my fault, probably because it might have correlated to some personal trauma of her own, like being locked up like that, like please let me out, like why she was panicking like that. Like, I feel like more people would probably be like, let me out of here, and this, yeah, but like she was having an anxiety, I think, because it triggered some stuff in her, because she might have been in a similar circumstance, like when it came to their quote unquote dad. So, but Lily hugs her at the end of it all, so it's like, yeah, despite everything, it's like, no, you're still my sister, you're still someone I care about because you were nice to me and I do care about you. So I think there's going to be it's going to be a complicated thing going forward with that, but that's definitely going to be interesting to keep an eye on. There's the Josh and Riley thing, which is really sweet. That was only a matter of time. But other than that, we go back to present day, still trying to track down Ella because I'm wondering why that is, though. Like, she's choosing not to, like, reveal herself. I'm like, why? Because it seems like the whole statue she was making, the handprint, was only a recent thing. It's like, oh yeah, she's been diving into it for the past, like, 6 days. Well, because, like, Gavin's been having the visions, like, in these past 3 years. But, like, did that mean it only recently sparked for her? Because it turns out, in totality, it's been, like, a week since the sinkhole situation in La Brea. So, once again, I always love getting an update about situations, but Gavin's still keeping Izzy on the outside of things just so that she doesn't get her hopes up again. So they're trying everything they can to track down Ella, and when they actually do, the moment she sees them, she takes off, and it's like, why? Why is she laying low? And now in retrospect, I'm like, did she know something was going to come, like someone would come looking, and she's avoiding them? For what reason? I wonder, is she avoiding Gavin for a certain reason? So, and what also sucks is that Gavin the entire episode kept having visions, but it's specifically of Eli and Eve, and you're just like, And even Sophia's like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, there's a Levi in her thing. And he's like, It's like, yeah, I can't blame her. Like, I pushed her away. And it's like, Nathan's like, oh, maybe she's like, maybe you'll have an opportunity to kind of fix things. It's like, hopefully, but that's complicated, especially because, like, yeah, because you can tell Levi's kind of happy because she's like, oh, I'm happy you're here, and they're holding hands and everything. And he's kind of happy about it. So it's like, that's going to get complicated. I was like, man, that sucks. Every vision you're having is just like about that. This episode, I'm like, oh, that's just rubbing it in, But at the same time, Izzy's trying to figure her way through it because she knows her dad's up to something, but he won't let her in. So she's trying to deal with things on her own. And she meets Andrew, Riley's brother, Sam's son. And he's, going through the process as well. It's like, yeah, we're in the same class, but he's like, I lost my dad and my sister to the sinkhole. So here's like a group, like a kind of a prayer group to get kind of a vigil for them. Everyone who's like lost someone. And Izzy kind of initially didn't want to go because she knows, like, no, they're still alive. To everyone else, they're dead. And so her and Gavin talk later on, and he's just like, I didn't want to get your hopes up again. And it's just like, just don't, like, you don't have to handle this alone. Like, we're in this together. Like, because she's like, I know that you would never give up. She's like, after my accident, I wanted to give up, but I knew what you were going through, and you were still fighting through it. So that got me to kind of, I guess it probably got her to do her physical therapy, or do, like, just past everything about losing her leg. So it's like, right, we have to kind of be there for each other in this moment. And so it's like, right, no more secrets. We're in this together. So he fills her in about the Ella situation. And they did go to the thing, and obviously we see pictures of people we recognize. Well, But we see like Tony and Bill. We see obviously Sam and Riley. We see a picture of Ty. So, because Izzy, without saying anything, it's like, no, it's not crazy to believe that feel like they're still potentially alive. Because Andrew was like, I probably sound weird saying this, but he's like, there's a part of me that feels like they're still alive. So, but then all of a sudden, they do track down where Ella was, at least like her place, and there, Gavin's like, why does this place seem so familiar? He's like, I don't understand. And then we cut back to like Isaiah and Silas, and it seems like his hand's wounded. I'm like, wait, you're not. Is there going to be some correlation there? Like, wait, is Gavin going to have a? And then they show that he does have. I'm like, wait. He's like, I was like, this is the place he's at. He's like, why does it seem so familiar? And I'm like, this is that watering hole. Like, this is that water that he was taking Eve to, that him and Silas are beside. And you're like, wait, what? And then Nathan's explaining it, because Aldridge was saying that Isaiah is special, and it's like, special how? And like Silas just is trying to stop it, and you're like, what's going on here? And then we get the reveal. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, yo, that's crazy. I mean, we figured, well, they made it clearer last episode that Gavin's from that world. Now, not only to make it that he's from that world, we've seen him, kid version of him. Because at first I was tripping. I was like, wait a minute. Like, are you having visions of yourself? Like, are you paralleling this? Like, what's going on here? Like, how is this possible? How are you existing there as a kid and here? I was like, man, I mean, well, it just shows you the craziness of the timey-wiminess of it all. But then in correlation, it's like, no, he's not having visions. Those aren't visions. That's why they're so specific. They're memories, because he's been keeping an eye on them for a long time. So he's been watching them every step of the way. So everything he's been seeing isn't a vision. They're memories that have been coming back. Like the portal, the sinkhole opening in the Mojave triggered something inside of him's latent memories. I don't know whether it's the timey-wiminess of like you went through it and it did something to you. You were so young, but that's why I'm like wondering, like, well, for one, if you are you as Isaiah, then who is Ella? And I'm like, you don't think that? I would assume you would think it'd be another person from the village, but you're like, you don't think that's Lily, right? Because Lily was like, hi, like, my name's Lily, and she introduced herself. So I'm like, is Ella like a much older Lily? Is that what that is? So she's the youngest person there amongst everyone from present day. So maybe she doesn't have as clear memories because she landed here back in this world probably in the wrong time period. I don't know if that's what that's supposed to be, or like, cause it could just be someone else. Cause it was like, the lady last episode did say like, oh, we're like, the girl was about 12 years old. So I'm thinking it's Lily, because they made that connection this episode. I'm like, dude, that's wild. So maybe that's why she's avoiding Gavin. Like, did she know the entire time? Like, maybe her memories kind of got a little scattered too. Because, I mean, he was younger, so that would make some sense why he probably wouldn't remember as much. But maybe she remembers a lot more. But then, once again, how does Aldridge and Silas play into this? And why is Gavin special? Like, why is he so important? Like, he's got something to do. And I guess it's in correlate. That's why, like, she was so invested in Gavin. She knew what was going on. Like what is Silas going to? That's what I'm thinking. Like, is Silas trying to protect him from doing something that will eventually get him? Like, is it something he has to do present day? Is it something he's supposed to do in this world? It must be correlated to these sinkholes. Maybe it is kind of like a space-time continuum. Like, oh, space and time is falling apart and Gavin's at the center of it. Maybe, I don't know. But it's like, also it's kind of crazy because it's for Eve. It's like, wait, I just met the I met my husband. I met the father of my children as a kid. Wait, what? That's Gavin. I'm curious. It's like, Eve's gonna have to probably explain that to the others too, like Ty and it's like, yeah, we have to find him. Like, yeah, why? That's my husband, Wait, what? Yeah, that means, wait, Gavin's from the... Dude! I love that, because once again, I was like, Gavin's from this world. Didn't even cross my mind to think that he'd be that we'd actually meet him, because I thought like, oh, he's already, like, he fell through a sinkhole and landed in another world. So that's why I'm like I said, Aldridge and Silas seem like they're from present time. So like that's what I'm saying. Like, did they have a means of, like, did they get popped back and forth as well? Like when Gavin landed here, him and whoever was with him, like I'm guessing Lily, but we'll see, landed like all those years ago, where did Silas and Aldridge land here with him, and they just kept their distance until the time was right for things to play, because they knew what the future held. They knew about the sinkhole situation, so Aldridge like needed to complete the loop or something. That's why I'm like, I don't know. Once again, the timey-wimey, it's getting to me in the sense of just like, I don't know how, like, I'm not sure what's the beginning and what's the end is kind of my point. I'm like, where's the starting point for this? It's, I mean, like, you know, that's the Ouroboros of it all. Like, you know, like, where's the beginning? Where's the end? It's hard to tell when the snake is eating its own tail type of thing. So I'm like, I'm so excited to find out where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.